Yeah, so I think off-chain is the way to go, and there's a lot of development going on right now in the off-chain space. If you look at the Lightning Network and some of the solutions that one of them I presented today, I think that if you go off-chain, then your capabilities scaling-wise are much less limited than they are in the on-chain space. So I think right now it's our best bet. Essentially all the off-chain solutions that are in development right now, they still peg to the blockchain in terms of security. So you get the security you get from the blockchain, it's just you don't use it until you need it. So you actually use the blockchain as sort of a judge. So if you look at the payment analogy, you wouldn't bring a judge to your coffee shop to ensure that the payment was done correctly. But if I take my coffee and run, then the coffee shop owner will, report me to the police, and then at some point I have to go to the judge. And similarly, off-chain solutions give you all the ability to go to the judge, which is the blockchain. It's just that as long as you play nice, nobody needs it. And therefore, it's much more scalable than doing everything through the blockchain. At MIT, there's a lot of other research going on, and I'm not involved in most of it, but the two most important things they're working on right now, both are layer 2. So one is regarding to the Lightning Network. So we're developing parts of the Lightning Network within MIT in our own Lightning Network implementation. So we're looking at some of the things that are still missing from that. And the discrete log contracts, the work that I presented today, is definitely something that we're building further on. So we're engaging with companies that think this is interesting material and try to bring it to the next stage. So there's a couple of things that I also discussed in my talk regarding bringing it totally off-chain and some improvements in the technology itself. I think the most important thing is that they're in touch with each other, so that academia will look at things that are viable for businesses to use. I think the role of academia is to research in areas that for-profit companies are just not ready to invest in. And at the point where the research comes to a phase where you can explain it to a company, and a company might say, hey, this is something that we can use in our business model, then there's time for collaboration. And I think that companies and academia should be in touch with each other and say, okay, look, this is a compelling use case. Maybe we can do something with this and make a product out of it or make a business model. So yeah, I think communication is key. As I see it, there's a lot going on in governments trying to leverage blockchain technologies, and not all of the initiatives are as useful. So they're also experimenting with it a little bit, which is good. But if you look at a government from a regulation perspective, I think their role is to sort of set the boundaries in which research can, freely evolve. And yeah, as long as there's no real harm to the community at large, we shouldn't, limit the freedom of research. But yeah, I don't think that right now there's a real strict need for regulation in general, as long as we make sure that nobody is scammed out of a lot of money, and I think that's where the focus is right now. Yeah. Well, I think that there's a possibility where if you have central banks that already have money in circulation, then a cryptocurrency can be a very nice extension to the systems that they already have, because cryptocurrencies have a lot of advantages over, for instance, cash, where cash has similar disadvantages in terms of the fact that they can't trace it and things like that. So I think it's good if there's some experimentation with state-owned or central bank-owned cryptocurrency, because it would allow us to better integrate fiat currency with cryptocurrency in general. That's now always reliant on central exchanges and other systems that you can use to swap one type of asset for the other. So yeah, it would be nice if that's there, and it would allow us to do the same cool things that we're now doing with Bitcoin, but then with euros or dollars, and that would be kind of interesting. I think for the general public to interact with blockchain and interact with cryptocurrencies in general, there's a long way to go in the sense that it's just not as user-friendly as normal money. So there's a huge burden for people to understand it, to keep it safe, and to actually use it in store payments or things like that. So there's a long way to go in terms of usability, and that could easily be 5 to 10 years out. That I wouldn't be surprised that it's that kind of time span. Well, I think that banks and cryptocurrencies shouldn't see each other as competitors necessarily. I think that they both cater to a different public, because there's plenty of people that enjoy using their bank and they're not easily persuaded to change their euro account for a Bitcoin account, for instance. So I do think that's a good idea not to try to get rid of one or the other. I don't think it's even possible. So we have to find a way where each system can be valued for its own merits. And yeah, I don't think that there has to be competition. There can be cooperation. That's much better, I think. I mean, since the GDPR became such a hot topic, I think there's a lot of companies that deliver products on blockchain technology that are questioning whether blockchain was the right choice, given that this, you have the right to be forgotten. And well, in blockchain, essentially you can't. If your data is written to a blockchain, there's no way to get rid of it. And so it's something that you have to consider when you're picking the technology. If it doesn't allow for you to be erased, then you can obviously not comply. But that said, I think that the GDPR is still, well, it's still fresh in the sense that everybody's talking about it, recently, even though it was, legislation from 2 years ago. So I think it's just not been accurately researched as to how this works together with blockchain. So more research is going to be happening in that space, and maybe it's possible to find a solution to it. I'm not saying that it can't, so let's see. I think the key takeaway of today is that there's a lot happening in the off-chain space, and a lot of it is still fully under development. And I also think that if people are interested in engaging in this kind of software and maybe in development, that we need a lot of help getting these solutions to a level where you can use them. And it's not going to come from the couple of people that are here in comparison to the people that are working on all the other types of software. So it's a very interesting field to get into, and I would encourage everybody who has an interest to reach out to the people that were here, reach out to the people that were speaking today. If you feel like helping out there, I think we can use a lot of help. So that would be great.